So week one is done. It's Ant here from Bear Down Abroad podcast. Week one is over. We've had the Monday night football. We got to stay up to 5 o'clock in the morning, or in my case, get halfway to a train station and keep going on. And it was going so well, but it wasn't meant to be. So let's get down to it. Myself and Tony are going to dissect this as much as we can. Not all doom and gloom, lads. Not all doom and gloom. But also, just so you know, there will be an Ant's rant in here. Stay tuned. Tony, hit the music.
Guys, you're loving it, man. You're loving it. Like, it's hard. Like, see when it starts going, you want to just keep going. You know, like maybe we'll run it twice as long next time, just for the sake of Ant getting his dancing in. But guys, welcome back to the Bear Down Abroad podcast. We're not quite as excited as we usually are, and that's because we came off a tough loss on Monday night. We're here to break it down. We're here to have a wee therapy session, as we like to call it. And we're here to also look at the good, look at the bad, but then ask, are things really that bad? And we'll hopefully be able to answer that by the end of the show. But Ant, first and foremost, man, how's things? You had a late night on Monday.
I did. Anyone that doesn't follow me on Twitter. So I got up at 2 o'clock. I went to bed at midnight, 11:30 midnight. And then my alarm went off at 2:10 a.m. and I wandered lonely with a coffee in my hand, sat down and watched the game. And honestly, I left at 3:15 because I had to get a train to Stockholm. So I was watching it on my phone. I couldn't believe it. I was watching, nearly crashed the car on the way to the train station. And by the time I got to the train station, it was over. And yeah, I couldn't believe what I was watching. And then you go through, as you just said, the emotions of everything. You're emotively connected to the game, and you're emotively connected to everything, and everything's terrible, and all the usual stuff you get involved with sport. And then you go back and watch it again. You go back and listen to people and watch things and see things, and you realize, yeah, it wasn't great. And we'll go through the bad things as well. We're not going to sugarcoat it, but it wasn't as bad as I think people are making it out to be. What about you?
Yeah, no, I was pretty much the same as yourself, man. I'm an hour behind. So, up at 1 o'clock after going to sleep, maybe about 11:30. And then that way, after the game finishes, yourself, you're sitting there and you can't really go to sleep right away because you're still sort of thinking about what you've just watched. So it was maybe like the back of 5 before I actually went over. But yeah, it was one of those ones where it was a lot of build up to the game, and rightly so, a lot of excitement, and rightly so. But then a lot of realization for a lot of people, I think, afterwards that, you can win the off season. You can be excited about all the things that are done on paper. But as the old adage goes, games are only won on paper. They're won on the field. And it's going to take time for this thing to get going, I think. And that's the reality of it. But yeah, is what it is. And I'll tell you what, then, what we'll do, because it seems to be that all we've really spoke about over the last couple of days on X and whatever else is the bad stuff. So let's do that. Let's get that out of the way, because I would imagine the stuff that we're talking about isn't going to be much different to anything that the rest of the lads and any other shows have mentioned as well. So let's start with that. And so I'll tell you what if you give me one of your bads, I'll give you one, and we'll go back and forth like that, and we can discuss each point and see where we are.
Yeah, I'm going to start my first bad because I was doing this on the train home from Stockholm today. I was thinking, what am I going to go straight into? And the first thing I wrote down to myself was special teams. I was blown away about how bad it was. Like, ineptitude. Okay, everyone misses a field goal. That's fine. Everyone misses a field goal. That's life. He doesn't have the boot. We know that. I'm sorry. Your head coach, and I've seen people giving out to Johnson about this. Your kicker from the halfway line needs to kick the ball out of the end zone. Like, I mean, that's his job. That is actually his job. And I'm sorry, Carlos Santos, we should have got the ball back with what they were saying, 40 seconds, 45 seconds left. And with no timeouts, I accept that, but it gives you an opportunity. But because of a terrible, terrible play by our kicker, compounded by other errors, like, let's not forget, he nearly missed the one in the first half as well. He just snuck inside the post. Then you throw in the fact of that we had a blocked punt that should have been another blocked punt earlier in the game. We have a punt returner that we got in the 53 because he's meant to be the punt returner. He was awful. And then for some reason, we do get Luther Burden before halftime, gets a 40-yard return, and then we don't ever show him again. Yeah. Like we don't even give him another go, right? And it kept going. Like there was one big hit, I think, from Hardy at the start, massive hit off a kickoff. But I wrote down something here. So of the 4 punts, we got 36 yards. Of the 4 punts the Vikings had, they got 64 yards. So there's 30 yards of a difference just on that alone. And I was flabbergasted by how bad it was. Like I didn't understand when we finally, as I said, we got momentum with Burden and we just didn't use it. And special teams, I know it's the least important of all those things, but it change in close games like that. It does matter and it does change things. And they were awful, absolutely awful.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely spot on. It was entirely disappointing. I don't think there was much that happened in special teams that you could be happy about, to be honest with you. The kicking game, wasn't there. The coverage unit, it just wasn't there. Even the punting, we go back to I'll always chastise Poles for spending a 4th round pick on a punter. And fair enough. There was the punt was blocked, and you could say that the coverage or the protection there wasn't great, and it wasn't great. And we'll come on to that later on as well. But saying that as well, there is, you even just watch the sort of motion. It was slow. It took a while for him to get the ball out of his hands and onto his foot and up in the air, sort of thing. All in all, it was just entirely disappointing. But you're right. The biggest thing for me was that Luther Burden return. How fantastic! I mean, the guy's pace. He was gliding through that. It was like a hot knife through butter. Watching him just kind of glide up the field. And just at the end of the first half, and you're like, Jesus, if we come back again in the second half and we let him get the ball again, if we end up having to do a kick return, then that can set us up really well, because field position for us is going to be a big thing here. We were struggling to move the ball at times in that second half as well. So if you're able to start on the 40-yard line, the 45-yard line, instead of having to start, further back of the field, then you've got to play to your strengths. You've got to use the tools that you've got. So I was disappointed in that coaching decision not to play him more. And the coaching is another thing we'll come on to. And actually, before we start really getting into the bad here, I know that you do want to rant, and I know that the people have been asking for Ant to rant for a while now. And it hasn't happened yet, because to be honest, much to rant about. It's been okay. It's been the off season. It's been the pre-season. But now that the proper regular season's back, I think it's time for Ant's rant.
I swear to God, I've had enough of this shite.
Exactly. That's it. I've had enough of this shite. And do you know what I've had enough of? What's my rant's going to be today? Every single time refereeing decisions. Every single time it's a refereeing call, it's a refereeing move. Everyone's gone about 12 penalties, 127 yards. I've written down 4 penalties. Manungai's hold didn't happen. It's not a penalty. The phantom hold that cost us, in my opinion, a real opportunity to clear the game out. There was a call on, I think it was Stevenson, where the guy fell over. He fell over, and because of that, Stevenson gets called back. And there was one on a face mask call, or a hand to the face, that wasn't a penalty. That went from a 3rd and 10 or 3rd and 7 to suddenly a first down, and they scored a touchdown off it. Every year, it's the same thing. And I know there probably other teams have the same problems, but surely to God, the technology is there that somebody in the upstairs goes, whoa, that's a really important moment in the game. That's not a penalty, or that's not something, because it changes the whole momentum. It's not the only reason we lost the game. I'm not saying that at all. But it seems to be now that the referees aren't fit for purpose. They're just not. And they're throwing penalty markers down. They're not explaining the reason they're giving penalty markers. The decisions are being made that cost people's jobs. They cost people opportunities, and they put pressure on different teams. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure, well, I haven't seen it yet, but I'm sure Bears are going to get a call that's going to be dodgy, and it evens itself out. I don't think it does. I really don't think it does. On Monday night, every 50-50 went against Chicago. Every single one of them. And it kills momentum. We should have been on the 12-yard line on a first down play at 17-6. And we should have been looking at killing the game. One more score in my eyes, we kill the game. And instead, we're knocking back 10 yards, putting more pressure on ourselves. And then Caleb has a little bit of a brain fart. And suddenly we're now looking for Cairo to kick a field goal, misses. And the momentum, I was hearing about, I think it was Brad Bigg said it, that on the sideline, the Vikings offense jumped up in the air and ran on the field because they knew it was a momentum switch moment. And it baffles me. It just baffles me that these referees don't seem to have any accountability. There's nothing commented on it. There's nothing done about it. And it's every season, man. It seems to be every single season. There you go. That's my rant for week 1.
I swear to God, I've had enough of this shite.
Exactly.
So there you go, and hopefully Ants Rants continues to make an appearance.
Yes.
It might not be every week. I'm actually, but I say it, hopefully it continues to make an appearance. I actually don't. I hope you're not angry enough to have to want to rant about anything, and it's all sunshine and roses until the end of the season. But let's be honest, it's not going to be. So, you know, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So yeah, okay. What we'll do is we'll move on to the sort of next bad. And for me, it was the running game, the lack thereof of a running game on Monday. It just what it was called, it just didn't get going. But for me, and Ben Johnson has admitted himself today as well, it falls on the play calling. He didn't call the run enough. It just didn't get going for whatever reason. I'm looking at the stats on here, and Caleb Williams actually probably got your most run. He had 58 yards, ran 6 times. You know, there weren't enough running plays called, which really disappointed me. The reason being is we talked about this offensive line. We talked about the upgrades that have been made in the interior. We already knew that Darnell Wright was out there, and sure enough, Braxton Jones as well. Like, can do a half decent job, but when he's got all those guys beside him, you hope that strength is there, and that means you can then run the ball, you can move the ball, you can get offensive line men doing what they like to do, which is basically, I mean, I used to play offensive line years ago. We like to just run the ball. You like to just get in people's faces, push them. It's great fun. Do you know what I mean? Like, but it just didn't happen. The play calling wasn't there. And let's be honest as well, and this sort of goes on to one of my other bads, which I'll come back to you. The offensive line wasn't very good either. There was a lot of problems there in the running game, but also in pass protection as well. But in terms of the running game itself, Ant, what were your thoughts on that? Were you disappointed that it never looked as good as you thought it would do?
One, I got to say this. I think people have lost a little bit of this. And saying the Minnesota Vikings defense is good. Like that's. I'll start with that.
100%.
In saying all that, Drew Dalman didn't have a good game. Josh Jackson didn't have a good game. I thought Joe Tooney did, to be fair. And outside of that, Swift never looked like he was going to actually do anything, which is very disappointing. And when he didn't, where was Monungai? He didn't get one. Like, DJ Moore got 3 runs. Monungai got 0. This is the guy that we were all talking about as they were really hotting him, and Ben Johnson saying, yeah, I really trust him. Well, you obviously don't. And it was frustrating for that perspective that we didn't ever get the run game going. Now, Vikings didn't get it going either. It became a weird one in that sense. Yeah. But whether, like, there was holes there, I saw a couple of things, there was holes there, and he took the wrong option. He bounced out once and got a big run in one case, and you're like, okay, maybe we're building momentum. And it goes back to my rant. We started to build momentum on the run, and then we get done for penalty, and suddenly we miss a field goal, and it changes all over again. But the run game, for me, is a confidence issue as well, and a belief issue, and a belief whether they're actually going to, like, go through with it. Swift isn't that run down the middle of the field guy. He's not the guy that's going to bang you yards. And it does put a question in around Ryan Poles' selections in the draft. It does look a free agency that we want to be a run first team. Well, Swift isn't that kind of guy. He's the guy that gets you into the backfield. He's the guy that will once he's free, he will do loads of yak. Like he'll do loads. He's a catch guy. He's a decent protector. Like he's that, but I don't think he is that bang down the middle, get you those dirty 5, 6, 7 yards and go again, like we had with David Montgomery, if I'm honest. And I think we're missing that. I think Roschon Johnson's injury was bad, but still, I never felt fully confident in that run game. And again, Minnesota Vikings are a good team, good defensive line. Their line looks pretty good, but still, you can't do much after that.
Yeah, you're right. The Minnesota Vikings are a good team. And I think when we look at this at the end in terms of our overall thoughts, we'll look back and say actually a 27-24 defeat to the Minnesota Vikings, who were a 14-3 team last year with an excellent defense. The defensive line has been added to a 27-24 defeat. If you'd have seen that before the game, you'd have went, well, that sounds quite close. And considering where the Bears were last year, maybe it wouldn't be that bad. But yeah, that's definitely a thing. But you're right. The DJ Moore thing, I don't mind him being deployed as a sort of running back, or if you're maybe running a sweep play or something like that. I'm all right with that. But for me, I think we took runs away from Kyle Monangai, as you say. I think he's a guy that clearly Ben Johnson had said that he has confidence in. So why not just play him? Why not play him? What's the point in having these guys on your team if you're not going to play them? And especially if you've kept them in your 53-man, and especially if you've come out publicly and stated that you have full confidence in this guy. It's a strange one for me. And I just wish that because we talked about that in the pre-game show. The run game is so important. Everything's going to come off of that. The play action is going to come off of that. And unfortunately, it just never got going, and it led us to be a bit more sort of one-dimensional than we otherwise hope to be. So that's something that has to change next week, or not even next week, in a few days when we go to Detroit. That has to get going, because if it doesn't, I fear that we're going to get in that one-dimensional state again. And unfortunately, I don't think that's going to lead to a win, regardless of how bad the Lions looked last week. And what's your next one?
Yeah, I think some of the abuse on Caleb has been unfair. I think some of the stuff that he's been done is unfair. But what I think is right, and it's a question he needs to answer pretty quickly, is accuracy. His accuracy of throwing is not good enough, I'm afraid, right now. And this is not a jump on Caleb. I think some of the pass he did down the line to Roma Dunes, like the first drive overall, his ability to get out of the pocket, his ability not to get sacked, his ability to try and do the things quick at the line, all those things are positives, and we'll talk about that later. But the accuracy was awful at key moments. There was a pass to Komet on the fourth down. He just threw it way too early. The DJ Moore one to the corner, way too early. He misses DJ on another one. And unfortunately, that is there in his game right now. Is it coachable? Of course it is. Is it there that I think it might recover as you go? Yeah. But unfortunately, right now, that's not necessarily the scheme per se. That's not necessarily the coaching per se. That's unfortunately something that's a hangover from last year that has kept the Caleb's game. And that has to improve. Because the example I gave, he hits DJ Moore, the wide open one, and suddenly I think it was 3 minutes left on the clock when it goes over. Suddenly then we are still in the game. So we will hopefully get a chance to get the ball back. And he made it himself. I also must say I didn't like his answer when he was asked about that. And his answer in the press conference was, yeah, those things happen. No, I can't have that. You're the quarterback of the Chicago Bears. You're the number one pick. You're getting real opportunities. This has happened before. You need to come out and explain why. And if the answer is I didn't get my feet right, if the answer is DJ was meant to go one way and went post instead, and I only had to change my throw at the last second, okay, cool. That's an answer. I don't mind that. But sure, these things happen. I'm sorry. That needs to change.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you. I think there's definitely issues there in terms of the accuracy. I don't think it tells you the whole story of the game. I thought personally there was a lot of good stuff that Caleb
Yep.
done, and you mentioned it yourself. You know, there's throws that he makes that a lot of folk aren't making in that league. So I think it's the talent's definitely there. I think for me, when you sort of watched it back, and then I've also, you know, because I'm not in any way, shape, or form any sort of expert when it comes to watching tape, but you watch it back, and then you watch other people, like Tim Jenkins, for example. You know, big fan of Tim. He's been on with us before. You know, there was a lot of stuff that they pointed out that was really good. There was a lot of stuff as well where I feel like some of it was a sort of mental thing for
Yep.
Caleb as well. You know, and the thing is as well, what people don't know is that what is he being told to do? You know, and that's what people have talked about in these YouTube videos. It's, you know, is he being told to get the ball out of his hands quicker? You know, just don't. You know, so there was a couple of opportunities. Like there was the one where Colston Loveland was over the middle of the field, and he was covered at first, and then he managed to sort of kind of just move to the left to get away from the safety that was covering him. And if Caleb had maybe just stood there looking at him for an extra second, you know, maybe an extra second and a half, he'd have seen that. But he's going through all his progressions, and that's the good thing. He's going through all these progressions. It's not just that one read stuff. He's looking at that guy. He's looking at that guy. No, right, okay, back, and he's then, you know, dropped it off to the tight end or the running back coming at the backfield. If he stands there for an extra second or two, then he sees that guy and he can maybe make the pass. That happened a couple of times where we've done the opposite of last year, going, if only Caleb had held on to the ball for an extra second there. Do you know what I mean? Whereas last year it was, he's holding on to the ball for too long, you know, like, and it's that balance of trying to get it right, which is the difficulty. But the thing I would say is, yes, there were definite mistakes, 100%. I don't think the protection was particularly great. I didn't think Drew Dolman was very good. I didn't think Jonah Jackson was very good. I thought there was a lot of pressure in Caleb's face a lot of the time. But you're right; it doesn't negate the fact that there were a couple of passes that just go. They scream like, "What the fuck was that, man?" Like that just looked like a total. Like it looked like you were throwing a flyaway at someone as opposed to a football sort of thing, you know. But
and
yeah,
I think Surfing's room. I think that's expectations are so high because you're number one draft pick. I get that, and I think there is a hangover from last year. I think there is a worry that I'm holding the ball too long, and it's in his head a little bit, and that's a worry, a real worry. From what was done last year, but you're hoping that with the coaching ticket there that gets eroded away as it gets on. But it wasn't just those two. There was the start of the second half where the passes were down people's feet, and it just felt like he was told at halftime, "We must score." At the start of the second half, we must score, and he took it all on himself. And that's he's only in year two, start of year two. It's a brand new scheme. I get all that, and you're hoping that will improve, and it could improve. It was just for me. The one, ironically enough, it wasn't even the DJ Moore one. It's the one on fourth down, the one to Cole Kmet that made me go, "Oh man!"
That was just a bad throw. That was just a bad throw.
But it was a bad read. It was a bad read. It wasn't just the throw and the execution. It was a bad read. So he knew Cole was coming open, and he threw it too quick. And it was almost like trying to get the show done before it was ready, and that comes down to calmness. And I get that that'll come as you get more experience and you I get that, but you want to have you really want to see that next level step up again. Let's do the same conversation and go the opposite. His scrambling out of the pocket, his ability to see problems, his ability to get out of it's hilarious. I'm going to mention this, Justin Fields-esque in some scenarios where he was able to escape from nowhere, where he was there was at least twice where he had two lads on him and he somehow escaped, gets the ball down to Roma Dunze. His getting the plays in was much better. There was a confidence about that first drive that gives me hope for everything going forward. He made some really good passes. He had a good one to Loveland. He had a good one to, he was, as you said, he was picking his progressions. He was working through them. He was dumping it down when he needed to. He was looking for certain people. He was reading what was coming from Vikings, and 10 out of 10 to start the game. So those are great. And then he goes 13 from 15, or was it 11 from 15 or something? I wrote it down somewhere. And you're going, okay. You started seeing it in the third quarter where it started going back into last year, Caleb. And you're like, okay, that needs to get eroded away quickly. I'm don't get me wrong, I'm well on board. I've seen some stupid takes in the last 48 hours. This guy's our quarterback. We need to stop with this bullshit of trying to get rid of everybody and fire everybody and bring in this lad and bring in that lad and trade for this guy and draft this guy. No. Caleb Williams will be the quarterback of the Chicago Bears for this season. Ben Johnson will be the head coach for the Chicago Bears this season, next season, the season after. It's up to Caleb by the end of this season. If he's going to be the quarterback, you can have the conversation in the summer next year. But right now, they are the future of the Chicago Bears. You get on board or you don't. Doesn't mean you don't criticize. Doesn't mean you don't comment like we've just done there. But you've also got to take it with a scenario of going, it's not all terribly bad. It's not all a disaster, but there is little worryings that need to get ironed out.
Yeah, I think as well, though, I think we all need to admit that we don't fully know everything that's going on with the situation as well. Like you don't know if the play call got in there quick enough. You don't know if the guy who's running the route ran it the correct way. You don't know if, do you know what I mean? Like we're seeing the throw missed, right? But you only know half the story. Only those guys know exactly what was meant to happen there and who made the error, whether it was Caleb, whether it was the receiver, whether it was the protection, whether it was the play call, whether it was any of that stuff. Only those guys know. We can only look at the game and go, that throw looked shite. But as I say, it's only half the story. I would be more concerned about this if we were at week 8 or 9 and this was happening. I think we've got a long, long way to go. I think we have to look at the scenario where this is his third play caller in a year. This is his second offensive scheme in a year. And from all accounts, like this particular scheme is quite complicated, you know. We heard Peggy on here a couple of weeks ago talking about its long verbiage and all this kind of thing. Like, I just think it's going to take a while to get going. Even looking at the offensive line, Joe Tooney hadn't suited up for the Bears ever before. This is his first game. You know, so you look at the offensive line and those guys haven't all played together before. This is the first game. There's going to be teething issues. Everyone's learning. Everyone's kind of getting towards that goal. These things don't just happen overnight. You sign everybody in May or whatever, and then by the time you get 4 months down the line, they're all shit hot. It doesn't work like that, generally speaking. And on top of that, you've got a rookie head coach who has never been a head coach before in his life, who, in my opinion, if we're going to keep talking about bad, then I'll bring out, I don't think the play calling was consistently good. I don't like the fact that he didn't go for a field goal early on in that game on the 4th down. I would have rather had the 3 points on the board at that point, given the fact how close the game was. The running game, he didn't get the running game involved a lot. Tight ends weren't involved very often. You know, there was a lot of stuff there. You can even look at the challenge, and we can talk about that. We lost out in that. If we had that extra timeout in the second half, that would have been golden.
Yeah, I still think
he admitted himself that he shouldn't have done it. You know?
Yeah, I get that, but I still think at the time I was screaming saying that's a fumble. And I still think it's a fumble, by the way, because the guy tried to get up and wasn't touched and the ball was touched. And I know all this technical part of the rules, but if you look at the sport, that for me is a fumble. Anyway, I get your point. We don't know what's going on in the room. I get that. I fully do. And I get the fact that we're we're unable to know those things as to what it is. I totally agree on Tooney. I also agree Ben Johnson didn't call a good game. I think he was out coached by Kevin O'Connell, which isn't the worst thing in the world. Kevin O'Connell's a very, very, very good offensive mind. Brian Flores is a brilliant defensive mind. And what I thought, Brian Flores was a genius at this, and I only heard it from somebody today, and I thought it was really well put. He did one blitz in the first quarter, Flores. Right? And he literally was sucking the Bears into a false sense of security in my eyes. He was sucking them in and sucking them in and sucking them in. And then he went on the, I think it was near the end of the second half, and then all day after that. And it suddenly threw them. And Ben Johnson didn't have an answer, which is understandable as a rookie head coach, but it's disappointing, right? And I think that goes across everybody's performance. It was disappointing and clunky, and especially on the offensive side of the football. And you just wanted I disagree with you a little bit on the fourth down one. I get your point, but if you go 10-3 and then suddenly they get a touchdown, suddenly it's 10-10, and you do all this momentum you've got versus you get into the red zone, the way everything was going the first drive, you are moving the football. There's a chance you go 14-3 up, and suddenly you're now dragging the game into a different sphere and think you want to win it. So that didn't bother me per se. The execution of the play bothered me. The way it was done bothered me. But then we went and got the ball back straight away from our defense, which is a big plus I'll talk about later.
Yeah.
But I found everything seemed to be a bit clunky, a bit all over the place. There was no rhythm after the first drive. And look, we scored 3 points from after that first drive before we got to the last kind of touchdown right at the end to try and get us back into it. That's not good enough. Don't care whether that's the play calling, the players on the field, combined everybody. 3 points at home in week one when they're missing their big safety defensive player, that's not good enough, unfortunately.
You're spot on. And that's why, for me, when you get to that early fourth down, you just take the points. And you give yourself a bit more of a cushion. I think a Ben Johnson a few weeks from now takes the points.
Correct.
And that's
I say Ben Johnson has the game back. He takes the points.
Aye.
I think Ben Johnson has the game back. He runs the ball more. I think he learned more. And I'll say this: I think he learned more about himself as a head coach from that game than he will for the next 4.
100%, man. Like, and this is the thing. Like, when you see if you break it down, right? If you break it down, this experience has been invaluable for everybody involved, right? If you get your arse kicked in week 1 versus getting your arse kicked in week 12, you take that every day of the week, right?
Yep.
But in actual fact, and we talked about it already, the Bears didn't actually get their arse kicked. We lost by 3 points against a very good team, a very well-organized team, when we are a new team, really. Do you know what I mean? Bunch of people that haven't played together, especially on offense. You know, you've signed a lot of these top name free agents or whatever. But, you know, it's going to take a while to get it going. So if the way I look at it is if you went into this game last week, you said the Bears are going to lose 27-24. You would go, that sounds quite close. I mean, it's disappointing to lose, but that's quite a close game with a team that's decent. Now, that people will then say, well, JJ McCarthy's the quarterback, and you know he's effectively a rookie, and it's like, well, yeah, he is. Okay, fair enough. But JJ McCarthy played pretty shit for the first 3 quarters. It wasn't until the last quarter that he actually got going. It's the rest of the team for the Vikings that you look at. At the end of the day, even if you're a guy dropping off the ball to a Justin Jefferson or whoever, they're still going to make plays, and you've still got a defense there that are going to really, really go after the Bears, especially if your offensive line isn't looking as clever. So, yeah, it's not the worst thing in the world. It really isn't. And I think you're right. We could really benefit moving forward in terms of a learning experience. But let's talk about the good stuff then, because it isn't all that bad, guys. You know, you might feel like it's all that bad, but it isn't at all. And let's you mentioned the defense already, so let's start there. I thought there was a few standout players on that defense. I think the unit in general played very well. I liked the way that Dennis Allen called the defense as well. I think it was aggressive. I liked the first thing that I mentioned was on that first defensive drive, or the first offensive drive for the Vikings, when the Bears were rushing 4 men and getting to the quarterback. They were getting pressures, whereas last season they were rushing 4 all day, all week, and nothing was ever hitting home. Whereas something just slightly different this time around, whether it's the players that have been brought in, whether it's the coaching or whatever it is, like they were getting there, they were disrupting, they were causing problems, and I think sticking on the line for the moment, I think first and foremost, Dio Oyingo was.
Let's just call him Dio.
Very, very good for his first outing. I think he benefited massively from not having Christian Darenshaw there left tackle. However, you can only play against who's in front of you. And I think he was excellent, absolutely fantastic. If we got that every week from him, then he's absolutely worth the money. And then the next guy on the line who really impressed me, as he always does, was Gervon Dexter. Yeah. I think he's just a total ace in the hole, man. I love that guy. He's constantly getting involved, making plays, disrupting. The guy has that ability. He's got that mental attitude. So for me, if we're starting off with a line, I thought those 2 guys in particular were absolutely excellent.
I also think what I loved about it is we slowed down Aaron Jones. A man who would have been a thorn in the Bears side. Now, I know he just scored a touchdown down the side off Noah Sewell. I'll talk about that in a minute, but I thought we slowed him down, and we slowed there down. We put pressure on JJ, and he was McCarthy, who I saw was given Offensive Player of the Week, which is weird to me. But he was all over the place in the first 3 quarters. We had his number. The defensive line really put pressure. They really focused on it. They were making good calls. They were making good reads. There was the guy off the practice squad gets a sack as well. We were really targeting the left tackle. We were doubling up. We were putting people on the line who weren't expecting to be there. You had some really, really good moments, and they seemed to have this energy about them. There was an energy about that defense that I haven't seen even. And Eberflus is a good defensive coach, but there wasn't the same energy that was there on Monday night. And I know in the 4th quarter they gassed, but let's not forget they were missing arguably 3 of their top 5 defensive players. And in the case of Kyler Gordon, they'd have been training all week with Kyler Gordon in nickel position, and then he gets injured somehow on the Friday morning, Saturday morning, whatever it was, Sunday morning, I think it might have even been. So they were missing him, and the guys that stood up did all right. I know Nishan Wright didn't have the greatest. He had 1 pass interference. I want to talk about that as well. That should never be. You should never get a pass interference if the quarterback's pass is behind the player. Yeah. If there's no way the wide receiver can catch the football, it should never be a pass interference call, no matter what side it's on.
You're not in a pass, are you?
You're rewarding the quarterback for being shit. Yeah. That's what you're doing with that play. So that's one little kind of comment I wanted to make. But overall, I thought, forget the pick 6. I thought the guys stood up. They were aggressive. They were in their faces. They got the crowd involved. They got them off the field regularly. They really, really did a number. And I agree with John Dio. I think that was answering critics. I'd love to see more of 98 because we didn't even talk about him. But okay, hopefully that's coming, and maybe there was more. I didn't see the all-22, so maybe there was more attack to that. But if we had Kyler, JJ, and TJ Edwards, we win the game. In saying that, Noah Sewell impressed me again. Really, really impressed me again. Took his opportunity. I know he's not great on man coverage. I get that, and he'll have to improve, and he'll be targeted on that one. But I thought he was dominant in the tackle. He was making plays. He was plugging holes, and when he was there, he was dominant. And that's really, really good to see for him coming through and his development going from preseason into now.
Yeah, absolutely. Noah Sewell was going to be one of the next guys I spoke about. I think he was everywhere. Anytime he's seen a play, he was there. He was involved. I'm pretty sure he was the guy who had punched the ball out as well on that one, the challenge as well. Do you know what I mean? He was absolutely all over the field. You love to see it because when you see a guy like that drafted, I think he was at the 5th round, but that was a guy who a year before or whenever it was touted to be one of the top guys, one of the top defensive guys in the draft. And for whatever reason, it didn't work out that way. So he's obviously got something there, and it's just getting the right people to get that out of him. And I was absolutely delighted because obviously we all had a bit of a panic when we seen TJ Edwards wasn't going to be involved. But really, with Noah Sewell in there, they did pretty well. Do you know what I mean? Like there wasn't a huge drop off really. Obviously, you still want to have TJ Edwards in there, but the fact that now you've got that strength and depth, and I think Sewell will get a lot more snaps moving forward based off of that performance. So I think it was absolutely excellent. You mentioned Montez Sweat there. I continue to be entirely disappointed by Montez Sweat. I actually forgot he was on the field. I really did. What you want with your pass rushers is for their name to be mentioned. You don't want that with your offensive linemen, but you want that with your pass rushers. And his name wasn't mentioned until, second half. Whenever he got that pass breakup in the game. That was the only thing that I could see him contributing to this actual game. And it continues to baffle me as to why that's not happening. If you think, we gave up the second round pick for him, which in itself isn't a huge amount. But the money that he's been paid, for what he's actually producing is scandalous. He needs to up his game. He needs to stand out more. He's got guys on the line with him now who should occupy folk. You've got Andrew Billings there. You've got Gervon Dexter there. You've got Grady Jarrett there. You've got Dio Odeyingbo there as well. I'm getting better at saying his name clearly. And they all seem to get involved and stuff. But I just don't see it from him. Now, again, it's only the first week. But with him, I give less leeway to, because you're a pass rusher. Your job's relatively straightforward. Get to the quarterback, I'm not saying it's an easy job, but you're not having to think of this long verbiage and blah, 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 and all this kind of stuff. Like you listen for your bit and then you go, right, okay, fair enough, let's do that. So yeah, need to see more from him immediately. You need to see him making an impact on Sunday, getting to the quarterback, disrupting plays. So that's a big one for me. If it doesn't happen, then I don't know what the Bears do, because at the moment you've really only got potentially the one pass rusher. And to be fair, and just to play devil's advocate, Odeyingbo was up against a second stringer. Hopefully he can replicate it and do it again and again and again. Absolutely. But I'll ask the question I asked before week one ever started: where's the pass rush coming from? I don't think.
I think what it ended up being, and this is where I think they missed Kyler Gordon. I really do, is because I think they were, and I said this in the pregame show. I think you'll see Gordon blitzing all day. Like, he'll be their runner. I think you'll find Byard will start doing that because they realize that their pass rush isn't coming from outside. And I think Dennis Allen's attitude is stop the run game first, and then use his explosive, speedy killers in his eyes to really focus on getting at the quarterback that way. And we'll get into the Lions game in a minute, I'm sure, but we're going against a quarterback this week that isn't the mobile quarterback that you would have been used to facing in other games. So now you are really putting your pressure on your edge rushers to get to him. And we did it before. We did it last year. We did it the year before. We definitely got at that offensive line, which has digressed a little bit, but they still have in Penei Sewell probably arguably the best left tackle in football. So now you're not going to have that. I don't think if you to expect Dio to perform again like he did this week or last week, this week, maybe unrealistic. But then you've got to get more pressure from Montez. Dexter's getting pressure. I'm sure Garrett will get pressure. Edmonds was found himself getting there as well. That's what's going to have to happen with this defense. And it was a positive. It really was a positive, that defense. And I know I was going to say, but the fourth quarter, we conceded 21. I put that down to our offense. I really do, because our offense should have been holding on to the ball for longer. We didn't in the second half. We didn't do drives, really. We didn't contain them and keep them off the field. And defensive linemen get tired, man, going into the fourth if they're constantly going back onto the field, back onto the field, back onto the field. Merge that in with some of the penalty calls given against them. And that's where I see the 21 points coming from.
Yeah, I think so. And I think as well, you mentioned Kyler Gordon getting back, but I think this week, if we get Kyler Gordon back, if we get Jalen Johnson back, that instantly makes your coverage 100 times better. If your coverage is 100 times better, it means the quarterback is holding on to the ball longer, and it means that your pass rushers have got more time to get to the quarterback. So, all these things marry up with each other, and it's so important for them all to complement each other as well. So I'm hoping that if we get those guys back, and I think the injury report should come out today at some point. I don't know if it's came out while we've been on. I could check in a second, but that comes out today. We should get an indication as to where we're at with the guys moving into Sunday. I think Gordon, because he was sort of a last minute, he had that niggle, he might be good to go. The big one's Jalen Johnson, though. We want to see that guy back on the field. Fair enough. Nashon Wright got his pick six and took it very well. It was just a really bad throw by JJ McCarthy. And you expect people to capitalize on that. He picked up a little injury as well. I know he came back into the game, but that may be something to keep an eye on. But I think the upgrade from him to Jalen Johnson is going to be absolutely huge. And again, if you've got Kyler Gordon back there as well, then we're back to full strength defensive back wise, and we're ready to roll. And that's going to make your defense even more intimidating and scarier than it was this week. So it'll be really, really interesting to see where that goes. The last good that I'll talk about, and we've talked about it already a little bit, is in regards to the offense, because there were some good stuff, right? There was some stuff that went well. And I think what we have to say is you would hope that happens more than it has happened this week. We saw some great throws from Caleb Williams. We saw some excellent scheming. We saw some plays that were called by Ben Johnson. You're like, yeah, that's the offense that we know we want to have here. So I think it's good that you've seen that. I mean, that could have been a whole game of just shite. It could have been. It could have been. And we've seen that before with the Bears offensively. You go in, you remember games when you're playing the Seattle Seahawks. For some reason, there's a lot of them. You score like 6 points and 3 points and 9 points and, all those sorts of things. It wasn't anywhere near that level of bad. Caleb Williams is a good quarterback. Caleb Williams is a second-year quarterback. And it's going to take time. We're going to have to be patient. And I'm not saying it's going to take years, but we have to give them a few weeks to get going. And I think it will get going eventually. We know the offensive prowess of Ben Johnson. We know that he's able to get teams to score points. Look at Detroit before he became the play caller. Look at Detroit once he's left being the play caller. He still scored 24 points with an offense that's struggling. And so I've got some really high hopes for that offense. I actually forgot one of my bads.
Go on.
If you don't mind, I'll just quickly throw it in there. And it was actually funny because it was part of my bold prediction of the week that we wouldn't have any pre-snap penalties. And I don't know why. I don't know why, because that was fucking stupid. Because the pre-snap penalties were atrocious. Absolutely atrocious. Those penalties, I think, were one of the biggest percentage contributors to us losing that game. Getting pushed back 10 yards here, 10 yards there, holding calls, false starts. It's just fucking so irritating. And that has got to be one of the main things that those guys will have been focusing on in the off-season. And the fact that we've got to week one and it's happened in such an abundance has got to be absolutely killing Ben Johnson. He's got to be one frustrated guy. How do we fix that, man?
See, I think that one is definitely, if it's a complicated cadence, if it's a complicated play calling book, that's in a weird way not surprising. Annoying, yes, but not surprising. Like there's one on DJ Moore because he came across way too fast and then went. There was one, at least one on right. There was one definitely on Jonah Jackson. There was all those different ones that were, as you say, momentum killers, stupid. Whose fault it is, I actually don't know the answer to that. Is it fixable? 100%. But it's definitely something that there needs to be a real focus on. And it's silly. It's, as you say, it's silly yardage you're giving away. You're putting yourself under pressure for no particular reason, and it's in Darnell Wright's game for some reason, and we've seen it a lot. And saying that he gave up no pressures, so it's a balancing act somewhere in between those two things, and it didn't seem to happen to the Vikings away from home with a rookie quarterback. So you got to ask questions as to what exactly is being taught to these guys or is it just a one-off thing? We got to see improvement in Detroit. We got to see improvement in that side of it, and stuff that you can control is, especially when you're now going into a hostile environment in Ford Field. You're going to a hostile place where they are baying for blood, and they are going to be loud, and it's a loud stadium. We need to see real improvement in that now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to say the exact same thing. You're going to, because those guys in Detroit are going to be baying for blood. We know how they feel about Ben Johnson making the move to Chicago. So those guys are going to be loud. They know, they'll have watched the game on Monday night, and they'll have known the issues that we've had with the cadence and all that kind of stuff. So they're going to be making as much noise as possible. So these guys have got to come up with a plan. I don't know what the plan is. I'm not paid enough or at all to answer that. so yeah, we'll see how that goes. All right. So listen, that was our sort of breakdown of the game. So I'll ask you the question then: are things really that bad?
I don't think they are. I think emotive me after the game, as you said, I was on the train up to Stockholm. I was cranky the whole way up there. I was cranky when I got to Stockholm on my first work meeting. But as I went back over the second time, yeah, it's not as bad as everyone says it is. I keep going back to this because I've heard no one say it. Minnesota Vikings are a good football team.
Yeah.
And they have, okay, I'll say this. At the moment, right now, they have a better coaching ticket. They've got a better head coach. They've got a better defensive coach. They've got a team that is used to winning close, tight games. Kevin O'Connell seems to have this weird ability to win those close, tight ones. Even when they're not playing well, they hang in there and they win the game. And you've got to give them credit for bouncing back from 17-6, going into the fourth quarter, having been atrocious. And they did that. And sometimes you got to hold your hands up for that. And I would be more worried if there was stuff that I didn't think was fixable. So, like, if there was stuff there that wasn't fixable, that wasn't, whether that's the offensive line's getting completely blown up every play and Caleb's getting sacked every minute and the defense is unable to stop the run and we're being gassed, then that's a bigger worry. This one was stuff that we should be 1-0. We should have won the game. I'd say there's 5 or 6 reasons, 5 or 6 moments that if it differs, one of those 6 moments, we win the game. Whether that's the penalty call, the phantom one, or whether that's the kick from Santos, whether that's the pass from Caleb to DJ, whether that's the ability to slow the run down at the start of the fourth quarter. Little things like that, little moments like that changes the game. We win it. Vikings needed all those to happen to win. Yeah. And that's a big difference. So, and for me, that's the encouragement going into Ford Field. I will say this. I had all predictions. I've been saying we're going to lose this game against Detroit. And I haven't changed my opinion. I just think Detroit are a better football team. That's just right now. Will they be a better football team by the end of the year? I don't know. Maybe not. But right now, they're a better football team. And it'll come down to the players on the field, and it'll come down to decision moments that will be made. And I necessarily aren't looking at, we have to win this game. This is a must win, la, la, la. No, I want to see improvements. I want to see less penalties. I want to see less less pre-snap penalties. I want to see more accuracy from my quarterback. I want to see more pass rush from my big paid pass rusher. I want to see a game plan that's been executed to the best it possibly can and let the chips lie from there.
Yep, no, I totally agree with you. I think it's going to be a tough one this week for definite. But are things really that bad? No, I don't think they are. I think there was a lot of good stuff in that game. I thought there was some bad stuff as well. But as I keep going on about this, and we've said this, we've both said this for weeks. You know, way back at the first show, this is going to take some time. This is going to take some patience. It's a brand new offense. You know, Lee said there, give it to the bye week and see where we are. I think that's fair. I think you want to see continual improvement week on week. And I think you will see that. I think things will get better. I don't think they'll get worse than they are. I think Ben Johnson is savvy enough to be able to spot things that haven't gone well and make adjustments. I don't think the adjustments happen as much within the game on Monday, but I think they will happen between now and Sunday afternoon. So, yeah, listen, we know Caleb Williams is a good quarterback. We know that there's some issues there. We know that Ben Johnson is a good play caller. We know there's some issues there. We know that our offensive line on paper is very, very good. A couple of issues at the weekend, you know, like these guys don't just become bad, you know, overnight or whatever. Like, and I think we just have to have a bit of patience with this thing. But for the folk that are calling for Tyson Bagent to be the quarterback already, I think that's absolutely ridiculous. We seen
by the way, that's not a bash on Tyson Bagent, by the way.
No,
very good backup quarterback. But
100%.
I said this in the show. Sorry for interrupting you, but
no problem.
We will have to stay with Ben Johnson. We will have to stay with Caleb Williams. We will have to stay with this offensive line, because what are we doing otherwise? We've got to stay with our defensive line. We've got to stay with our play calling on offense and defense. And at the end of the season, at the end of the year, then we can evaluate and go, okay, what do we need to tweak? Because it's just tweaking. Caleb Williams is going to be the quarterback of the Chicago Bears this year and next year, unless something drastic happens where he absolutely, unbelievably falls apart. So let's get ready for that. It goes back as well. Bears fans, we seem to have this entitlement that we think we're going to be good instantly. And it's instant gratification. We want everything to be perfect now, so that it works right now, so that we're going to go and challenge for the NFC Championship games. And I get that, we're fans. We fully want that. But for me, this one is about building momentum, seeing progression. The Lions game, for me, if we get blown out the door and we look awful and the same problems from week one are rolling into week two, we can sit here next week and go, oh yeah, this is getting a bit worrisome. But I still want Caleb Williams as your quarterback at the end of the season. I still want Ben Johnson as my head coach at the end of the season, because otherwise, what are we doing?
Yeah. No, you're absolutely spot on. But you know, listen, this is the first game of the second season. You know, Justin Fields had 3 seasons at the Bears. Mitchell Trubisky had 4 seasons with the Bears. You know, like to give up on this guy who's clearly a better quarterback than both of those fellas is just mad. So listen, let's give it a few weeks. Let's see what happens. But I genuinely think that it will get better. I don't think things are really that bad. To put it in perspective, I talked about this already, a 27-24 defeat. To me, it wasn't the loss. If you'd have lost that game 27-24 in a different manner, then this would have a completely different optic on it right now. It's the manner in which the game was lost. It was that second half, particularly fourth quarter collapse, combined with the errant throws and decision making and all that kind of stuff. It fell apart. But that game could have looked so much different, a 27-24 game. It could have been built a different way. The story could have been different. And you'd have been looking at that score and going, yeah, okay, fair enough, late on a week 2. So I think we have to continue that sort of mindset and move on to week 2. And speaking of week 2, so basically our week's been totally messed up. We usually do a Monday podcast, but because the game was on a Monday this week, we had to sort of fit in the preview on the Monday, and then we thought, well, we'll need to do a review. So our next show isn't actually until the Monday again, which is after the Lions game. After that, we'll get into a bit of a routine. We have a better routine anyway, but we can briefly talk about the Lions game. And the Lions had a terrible week 1 as well. In terms of a team that notoriously can run the ball, they ran for, I can't even know what it was, 50, 60 yards, something crazy like that. Anyway, like it was pretty minuscule. So, where are you with the Lions? How do you think they're going to respond? We're obviously talking about the Bears responding. Are we expecting them to come out with the traps swinging as well, and we're maybe going to see the Lions of old, or where are you with that?
I think the Lions are a very good football team. I still have the Lions as the favourite for the division. I still do, even after the games this weekend. I think they've got, they're missing their coordinators. I get that, but the players on the field are better than what they've shown last week, and they've got a style of football that's been ingrained in that team for 3 years. They've all been playing together for 2 or 3 years. They've got Hutchinson back. I know he didn't do anything, but that's a big plus to them. They've still got Gibbs. I know he didn't perform, but he's still a sensational running back for me. Goff is in the perfect team for how they play. Yes, they are a little bit weaker offensive line. Yes, there's more attack you can do on them than you would have probably done last year or the year before. Still think that they missed their chance at a Super Bowl last season, but they've still got weapons. And at the moment, they're a better football team than Chicago Bears. Now, doesn't mean we can't win the game. Any given Sunday, you can win. And I'm not going in there with a defeatist, we're dead in the water mindset. I think we will concern them more than we have previously. And I think if we play a no error football and we do what we're meant to do, and the game plan works, we'll be in there thereabouts come the fourth quarter. I think if I'm looking at it from both teams, if I'm the Lions, I could put it down to that just was a bad day at the office. We let the Packers roll us. We let them dominate us, and that's not something we normally let happen. And then I'm from the Bears, I'm like, it's week 1 of a new scheme. So my instinct would then have me saying the Lions are rightly favourites going into this game. It's at home. Also, the Lions will love the fact it's Ben Johnson's. They're playing the first home game against Ben Johnson. They love that whole element to it. The fans will be going bat crazy because you only had to look at Ben Johnson's press conference on Chicago Bears website, and it was all Lions fans commenting on it. So the fever pitch there for that. They will be going bat crazy for it. And for me, it does tip the scales on their way. You can get at this Detroit team. You can get at their quarterback. Their middle of their offensive line, I can see Dexter getting through that. I can see us doing a lot more stuff. And if we have Gordon fit and Jalen Johnson fit, that does put a percentages closer to where we want it to be. And I think we'll score against them, and I think we will put them under severe pressure. But if I'm being honest, they're a better football team than us right now.
Sorry, I was on mute there. No, absolutely. I think on paper, this is still the same team. This is still the same Detroit Lions team from last year. You still got Jameson Williams there. You still got Sam Laporta. You still got Aiden Hutchinson. You still got all those players that made huge impacts. And you've got to expect that that's going to happen again. This will be a Lions team as well who know Ben Johnson. Dan Campbell knows Ben Johnson, knows what he likes to do, and that'll go slightly in his favour. And this will be really a test of Ben Johnson, and is he able to pull something out of the hat that maybe they wouldn't expect? So that's going to be interesting to see how that one plays out. But you look at the Bears last season; they went in the fourth field last season and narrowly lost by 3 points. Midway through the season. So there's nothing to say, and that Bears team is worse than this one. The coaching was certainly worse than this one. So there's nothing to say that can't happen, and that was up against a Ben Johnson offense as well. Remember, so
and Aaron Glenn defense.
Yeah, exactly. So they've arguably got weaker in terms of their play callers, and we've got stronger. So there's nothing to say that the win can't happen. and maybe because it's like Wednesday, man, and I'm just in that sort of way. I'm like, yeah, we can definitely I'm confident again that we can get this going. If you asked me the question on Monday, after the game, no. If you asked me the question yesterday, I'm still sort of down in the dumps. But there's nothing to say that the Bears, if everything falls the way they want it to, if the offense does what they did when they did things well on Monday, if they do that consistently, and the defense does what it was doing and continues to do what it's doing, there's nothing to say that you can't go in there and come out with something. I remain quietly optimistic at this point. I won't give you a score just now. I have to see how the injury reports go and all that kind of stuff, and hear about practice the rest of the week as well. But yeah, it'll be an interesting one for definite. I think the whole X factor there. We mentioned Ben Johnson, him going back to Ford Field as well. He's going to want to make an impact. He's going to want to get that win. I think he knows himself as well, as you mentioned. That was a missed opportunity on Monday. That game should have been put to bed long before then, and they should never have let the Vikings back in the fourth quarter. So, plenty to chew on going into this week. Plenty to chew on for Caleb Williams going into this week. Silence the doubters. So, yeah, it'll be an interesting one for sure. And we'll see later on in the week how things go with player availability, etc. But we'll be back on the Monday after the game anyway. And who are we having on Monday again, actually? Sorry, I've totally forgotten who we've got.
Honestly,
Caitlin
Sharkey, brilliant. One of my favorites.
Caitlin Sharkey. And that's going to be
talk about Bears football, talk about hopefully a 1-1 record, and don't get too down, lads. It's not we're not in that devastation phase of the season yet. Yeah.
That's still to come.
That's still ahead of you. All ahead of you, baby. Tony, as always, it's been brilliant to have you on. Great talking to you.
Obviously, man. Yeah, that's good. You got anything else you want to cover before we jump off now?
No, I think I am dunsies.
Smashing. Okay, no worries. All right, guys, listen, thank you very much for tuning in. Thanks for listening to us drivel on about what we think is good, what we think is bad. You may or may not agree, but I think what we can all agree on is, tell us, yeah, definitely tell us. But what we can agree on is that we want to see the Bears bounce back this week. We want to see this offense get going. Might take a couple of weeks to get there, but that's the end goal for everybody. So listen, guys, thanks very much for tuning in, and thank you for witnessing the first episode that includes Ants Rants in quite some time. That'll return, no doubt. But listen, guys, until next time, take care of yourself and cheery bye.
Bear down.